Yeah. Right, is Jane Edwards there?
Yes, yep.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Jane.
So this is item 7.2.
7.1.
7.1. You're on the target there, Fiona. Okay, it's first item on the agenda. Welcome media and everyone. Item 7.1, risk management update.
Thank you. So good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, councillors. The purpose of my report is to update council on the status of its higher strategic and corporate risks for the July to September quarter. So the top risks for this current quarter have been assessed by the executive leadership team and also presented to Finance and Insurance Committee that met on the 11th of September. The committee has stated its satisfaction that the risks have been appropriately managed and monitored, and work that was identified in the emergent risk area will be undertaken over this next quarter and presented to the committee when it meets again in December. So councillors will see in the attached register that 8 of the 10 primary risks to council are assessed as being high or very high pre-mitigation. However, the thresholds for 6 of the 8 are assessed as lowering due to the mitigations that are currently in place. Risk 1 is the only one that's had its pre-mitigation threshold lowered. And this is as a consequence of one aspect of the risk. The consequence of it has been lowered, which has reduced the overall threshold pre-mitigation. Just to note that following the reporting last quarter, we've continued to use the risk status to capture where aspects of a risk are still being realised due to COVID. These risks 9 and 10 have not worsened over the last quarter. However, they do still have a watching brief in place, and that is there just to highlight that. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from councillors in regards to this matter? There don't appear to be. So you have the recommendations there to move. Is there a councillor in a position to move those recommendations A through to C that we received the report? Councillor Ford, seconded. Councillor Fraser? Councillor Ford, Councillor Fraser, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is everyone able to hear the speaker? Just want to confirm that before the next speaker comes along.
Jane was very clear. Yeah, she was
Yeah.
great.
Cool.
Yeah, all good up here.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the keeping of animals bylaw, item 7.2.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. This report is to present options to council so that it can make decisions on the keeping of animals, poultry and bees bylaw. And this report was also to present a draft bylaw for adoption. So council's completed public consultation on the draft bylaw and it received 8 written submissions. So after considering the submissions, staff are proposing a minor change to the bylaw that went out for public consultation just to ensure it's clear when people are required to get a permit. So in this report, 2 issues are discussed. These are the animals prohibited in urban zones and also the permit system and dispensation for OHI. So in relation to the animals prohibited in urban zones, staff have identified that council could proceed by endorsing the provisions currently outlined in section 5 of the draft bylaw. So that's the rules currently in there for urban zones, or council could propose changes to that section. And staff are recommending that council endorse the provisions outlined. And in relation to the permit system and the dispensation for OHI, council could proceed by endorsing those permit provisions and revoking the dispensation for OHI, or it could endorse the provisions and have the formal dispensation for OHI continue. And staff are recommending that the permit provisions are endorsed and that council revoke the formal dispensation for OHI. So the draft bylaw included in this report aligns to the recommendations that are being made by staff. So the options being presented in this report is that council could adopt the draft bylaw and revoke that dispensation. We could adopt the draft bylaw and continue to have the dispensation, or propose a different way forward. And that would include just if council wants to make amendments to the draft bylaw. So if council decides to adopt the bylaw today, recommendations are in this report are to bring the new keeping of animals, poultry and bees bylaw into effect on 12 October, to give public notice of the making of the bylaw, and also to treat dispensations that have been given to individual people as a permit under the new bylaw. And so if council also wishes to revoke the dispensation for Ojai, that recommendation is included in the report, and it's also in the recommendations to transition Ojai residents to the permit system by issuing permits to residents who are currently relying on that dispensation free of charge. And if council propose a different way forward, staff will just action whatever council wishes to choose. So the recommendations for this report are on page 25 of the agenda. I'd just like to note that there's also some determinations in the recommendations. So those are just a required part of the bylaw making process. And Michael's here with me, and we both could answer any questions you might have regarding this report.
Thank you. Are there any comments, questions in regards to this matter? Councillor Fraser.
I'm just wondering if there's a time frame around that free of charge permit system for Ojai, if it was chosen that way.
We haven't resolved any fixed time frame, but I think we'll be fairly flexible. I'm actually not sure whether anybody will actually need a permit actually in Ojai. I was there recently, I really couldn't see any animals that would need a permit. I think the ones that were approved 10 years ago have since moved on.
Councillor Byers.
Did you receive any feedback or submissions from Ojai speaking against the permit system?
Can't remember the exact details, but there were a couple from Ojai, and I think there was some preference to keep the dispensation. It might have been 1 or 2 submitters, but yeah, I'm not exactly certain on the number there, sorry.
The feedback I've been receiving as well. I worked hard to get that dispensation in Ojai, because it's a super town, and I think really needs to come up to retain that.
Can everybody hear Councillor Byers?
Had no idea what he said.
No
No,
Okay,
couldn't hear.
he's hearing, or if you want to speak up then.
I just asked if there was any submissions, feedback from the people of Ojai speaking against the dispensation that they currently have, and Robin said no, they received a couple saying that they were for it, and that confirms or speaks to the feedback I've been receiving from people of Ojai, and that they worked hard to get that dispensation because it's super good time, and the feeling is that they would like to retain that.
I guess an option possibly for council is just to amend recommendation M to add, say, a 2 or 3 year period where it's free, if you'd like to be specific. So, and that'll give them ample time to make application.
So through your worship, in relation to that dispensation, we did consider it, and we felt like the permit system, especially when we're just going to essentially pass on a permit to anyone who's currently abiding by that dispensation free of charge. So we're really just having a rollover, and it's for the reasons sort of outlined on page 30 of the report. It's just to have that district-wide approach, and in line with council's vision of just having one community, and also to try and make sure there's not different rules in sort of every town in the district, just so that people understand the rules, they're consistent across the district. So there were reasons why staff made that recommendation, but we're happy to consider feedback from council and make changes there if that's not the consensus. Yeah.
Which is where we'd prefer to go, is to have consistency across the board. So you're recommending that up until 1st of October 2023 or something like that?
I'm just sort of thinking of it now. I mean, we could add that in if you want to make it very specific and clear that they've got several years to make applications. So that would be paragraph, recommendation M. You just add at the end of it for a period of 3 years, say.
So I wonder if we discuss item I then. We have the, you happy with this, Fiona, that we discuss item I, where we need to resolve one of those points there, 1, 2, or 3?
Well, you need to do A to H first, and then we can look at I and the rest of them.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to move A to H at this stage. Is there a seconder? Councillor Menzies, all those in favour? Against? Carried. So then we'll look at some comments or questions around item I, where you have those 1, 2, and 3 to discuss. So we're hearing on the report that for consistency across council, that we create one rule for all, and there's been a possible recommendation that we change M to extend that date by 3 years to the 1st of October 2023. And then we've heard from Councillor Byers that the community fought reasonably hard. I do remember this being discussed and way back, but we have to be real here that the population at Ojai isn't what it was, and the children aren't there with the horses, etc. And I'm guessing that's what you're seeing now, because I know that the, especially around the area of the shearers' quarters, there were horses and all sorts there, but there's just nothing now. So can we just discuss that, bearing in mind Councillor Byers' comment in regards to revoking the dispensation? Is there any other discussion around this?
Well, Your Worship, I couldn't hear Councillor Byers' comments, so could I just get a clarification on what Councillor Byers is suggesting?
Councillor Byers is hearing from the community in Ojai, correct me if I'm wrong, that they would prefer to have a dispensation in Ojai, as in that they don't need a permit. However, under the bylaw, however, through the permit system, there is a way that can be addressed, and that to bring everything together into the same consistency across Southland, that there would be an opportunity for those that would want to keep these animals, that they apply for a permit like anybody else, and that it would be free in the Ojai area under item M for a period of 3 years, say the 1st of October 2023.
Can I ask a question?
Now we've got feedback.
Who's that, sorry?
Paul. Well, I was trying to. Oh.
Have you got two things open there, Paul? You haven't got your phone and your iPad on?
My iPad. I'll turn it off completely.
Okay.
Is that better? How's that?
That's better.
Is that right? Okay, sorry. Just a question regarding the fee. Is that inclusive of GST, that $322 or not?
Inclusive of GST.
Okay. And I mean, I just noticed here in Edendale, there's sections with no housing, about 6 or 7 in a row, and it backs onto farmland. There's a couple of horses and there's a couple of cattle here and there and all those sorts of things, which aren't actually doing any harm at all. And I'm just conscious, if we make that dispensation for Ojai, there are these situations in other townships. So there's a whole lot of grey areas, really. While what the bylaw is trying to do is absolutely the right thing, I think we just have to be a wee bit careful about the application of it. So it just concerns me that, yes, I mean, Ojai has some history and some issues, but we can't just take it for granted that other places and other towns don't have the same sorts of issues.
And we were faced with that dilemma when there was that issue at Riversdale about 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So do council want to support the thoughts of staff that have gone through this process pretty well, that we just have a one rule for all, or not? Councillor Scott?
Are there any logistical issues with OHI continuing with that dispensation from an operations point of view, other than the fact that it's just got a difference, but does it make your job any harder?
Doesn't make a difference to us. No. But if the recommendations of the report basically do continue with dispensation, if they get free permits, it's only after a 3-year period they would have to apply for a new one. If it was a new horse or a pig, say they would have to get a permit, just like everybody else in the district. It's just a kind of a transition away from that.
Yeah.
In years gone by, there have been dozens and dozens and dozens of horses up in that area. There's no doubt about that, but it's just not the same anymore.
I guess
And
information, 10 years ago, I was at a meeting in Ohio of the board, and there were many members of the community at that meeting. There was probably 30 or 40. And when the dispensation model was read out for feedback, there was very loud applause. So there was a very unique situation. I think most townships, you wouldn't get that kind of support for such an arrangement.
Your worship, as I understand it, there's very few you think are actually relying on the dispensation currently to keep animals in the urban zone that wouldn't otherwise be permitted at the moment.
Very few, in fact, there may not be any at all, but very few.
I think, and this consistent approach is being proposed by staff too, because there are frequently requests by different communities to have different exceptions to this bylaw. I think Riversdale, Nightcaps and Ohio have all had conversations at times, and it's just trying not to have a bylaw with different rules in every single town, so that there is a bit of a consistent approach, and there is a way for people to keep those animals if it's appropriate in this situation by getting the permits. Just trying to not have a bylaw that has 10 different sets of rules for 10 different towns.
Yeah.
And that's the approach we're trying to,
And that's the answer you want from this council today.
if you think it's appropriate.
Councillor Byers, speak up.
$325 to keep a horse seems like a lot of money. Now I know that's a one-off, but that lasts. $325.
Can Councillor Byers lean into the microphone?
Yeah.
So Councillor Byers is asking why $325 is the fee, bearing in mind that it is a one-off fee, but why is it $325?
$325 to keep a horse or goat or whatever. It just seems quite significant.
Well,
Can I just say, through you, Your Worship, this isn't being set in this bylaw. It's a process. The process was undertaken. There was the annual plan in the last round, so
Fees and charges.
to address what that goes towards. Michael, if you
well, in fact, we're setting the fees and charges for the next financial year around about now, including that fee. But to answer your question, it's designed to recover the staff time fully in processing such an application, and they do take several hours. Because you've got to get neighbourhood approvals, sometimes there's a property visit required. But if the council would like, I mean, it could give me feedback now if you'd rather that we made it so it was only, say, 50% cost recoverable and the remainder was covered by rates.
But that's in the fees and charges discussion, not here.
True. So I think the feedback possibly is that you'd like to at least explore that it's not 100% cost recovery, but rather subsidised by the ratepayer.
We don't have that discussion here, though. We have it in the.
It would possibly be a separate discussion.
So could I ask, please, the permit would last for as long as that person that applied for it's in that property, I presume? What's the duration of the permit?
For Your Worship, there's no expiry date proposed, is there, Michael? Yes, it's enduring.
So if someone sold their house, does the permit belong to the property or belong to the person?
It'll be transferable. So as long as the situation was the same, the new owner could continue with the consent.
Right, okay.
And we have a section and we have horse and goat. It's still one permit.
Yes.
Not per annum.
If I could say, I think I can't really hear anyone on that side of the room. Councillor Ford, Councillor Menzies or Councillor. I think it's an issue about the system on that side of the room, not just Councillor Byers.
Firing arrows when you're away out of the room, that's a bit unfortunate. Yeah, no, that's all right. Well,
I'm not firing arrows. I'm trying to give valuable feedback.
absolutely, I've got you. So Councillor Byers was asking the question, is that for the property or is it per animal? So it's for the property. So we've got to get back to this one here, item I, about the dispensation for OHI. Councillor Scott.
Can the permit be revoked under any circumstances? Look, say, is there a difference between the permit and what OHI's currently got now? And that you probably can't revoke something that's got dispensation.
It's a conditional permit. So they don't meet conditions of the permit, then we could cancel it. Yes.
So does that to you give you a bit of a safety net as far as having an operator that might not be playing ball with a full dispensation?
So the example of condition will be being contained on property or not causing a nuisance. So if they breach those conditions, they're in jeopardy of losing their license.
Could we make existing, like it's only that people new to OHI have to have the permit that the existing system is permitted carte blanche as a historic aspect of it, and only looking forward that they have to apply for a permit for a new application?
Well, at the moment, the dispensation is for OHI. And
I understand that.
What staff are asking for under one is whether we revoke it or adopt it and continue with the dispensation in the new bylaw, or propose a different way forward. I hope.
Well, I'm talking about a different way forward. I think I believe the dispensation shouldn't just be for OHI, but I can't. If we've given a dispensation in the past, it's more or less a permit. And I'm wondering if we could just formalise that as being the existing situation in OHI with those people who are there now is taken as being permitted. And then for the future, any new activity in OHI would have to be permitted. Is that feasible?
So there's an answer coming.
I think, is it Councillor Duffy? I think that's what's being proposed, Councillor Duffy, is that all the current dispensations that have been issued to individuals outside of OHI, they're going to be treated as a permit under the new system, and they won't have to apply for a new permit. And the same is proposed for OHI as well, that the people who are currently relying on that dispensation will essentially be given a permit free of charge, and it's been discussed whether a time period is associated with that. So there won't be any requirement to seek or pay for a new permit in that OHI area over the next time period.
Well, that's what I thought it was. It just, the discussion seemed to be something different. So I think that's practical outcome.
Any other comments or questions? So what are we going to do with I, bearing in mind, I think your question might have been answered in L as well, Councillor Duffy.
Yeah. Could I just ask another question? A couple of things I noticed. We talk about poultry. Does that include geese?
Definition, sorry.
Just checking the definition, Councillor Duffy.
Okay.
In the definitions,
It includes chickens, geese, pheasants, pigeons, peafowl, ducks, quails, domestic fowl of all descriptions.
You got that?
I didn't quite hear it. I'm sorry.
Yes, so included ducks, geese.
Yeah, it's on page 38 of the agenda. There's a list of what poultry includes, and it does include.
It's just geese can be noisy, raucous things. But I guess it's like a bit like dogs. If you can stop them barking, you might be right.
Okay, so what are we doing with this item I before we move forward? Councillor Byers, I'll repeat what you say.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if Ohio was to move to the permit system, then we would be issuing all of the existing dispensation free of charge. And that would remain in place in 5
3 years. Yes, that's correct. But there's no time period
No
for
time
the
period.
permit. It would last until,
and the permit would last.
Yes. yes.
Which is a dispensation. Did everybody get that? Okay, so are you thinking of that working for that community?
Well, I think got them on the phone.
No. Yeah, but there's 2 people.
But if the council's uncomfortable with maintaining the dispensation, then perhaps that would be
Wait, an option.
reasonable.
It's definitely not a reasonable option, as well as the option of any further coming into the community in the 3 years, having the same opportunity, is what I'm hearing.
Spot.
No, 3. Yeah, 3 years for them to apply for a permit without cost, which would be the dispensation, up until the, what did I say, the 1st of October 2023. But if they come to the community after that, they go through the process like anyone else would.
Okay, and just to double check, if you obtain the dispensation for Ohio, there's no additional staff cost, no effect on staff time, there was no downside really, it would just be a distance. Ohio, the only inconsistency
That it was for one community, not.
the one community that worked hard to get that dispensation.
Yep. But it has created issues in other communities since then at Riversdale, as you pointed out, because other communities were looking at why is it for Ohio, why can't we have it in our town? And they were looking at changing the bylaw. So that is where the issues start. That's why we've got to be seen to be consistent if we can. Councillor Scott.
Can I just make a suggestion that if we do go with that option 1, that instead of 3 years, we do 5 years, because this, I believe, will be reviewed in 5 years anyway, and that would actually give it time to make any changes then, and at least that gives them sort of what they've already got without having to dig into their pockets to pay for something they've already got. So that would be my suggestion, that I'll read all this.
I don't think you'll be under too much pressure in the next 5 years. Okay. So that's been moved by Councillor Byers, that we revoke the dispensation, item 1. Do you want to move that, Fiona, or do we go down the list?
Okay, who's going to second that one?
Is there a seconder?
That's 5 years.
I know we could talk about that in M. So the first thing to do is to adopt the draft board bylaw and revoke the dispensation for OI. And then in M, as Mr. Savades recommended, that council endorses recommendation I1 above, that which is just an OI residents, blah, 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 free of charge for 5 years to 1 October 2025.
And the conversation that we had around the structure of the how that cost during the
Please repeat.
With the fees and charges. So the first item is that you moved by yourself, Councillor Byers, that we adopt the draft bylaw and revoke the dispensation. Is there a seconder for that?
I mean, my
Councillor.
third option is that we retain that.
Yeah, but you're making a recommendation.
I thought we were talking about the 5 years.
But that's under M. We'll come to that shortly.
Third option.
Okay, right. I'm happy to move item 1 and then I1 that we adopt the draft bylaw and revoke the dispensation for Ojai. I'll put my head on the block. Is there a second?
I'm happy to second.
Councillor Ruttenclaw seconded it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So now Fiona will move
Yep.
through J, K, L and M, but there will be an amendment to M.
So the amendment to M is free of charge for 5 years up to October 2025.
You-
JK need to take out that council endorsing recommendation I1 or 2 above, and just start with resolves and.
Yep.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, J, K, L and M will all get that first bit removed out of them. So you're just resolving.
Thank you.
Yep.
And in line with the discussion with Councillor Byers and Mr. Sapiti is that the last part of that then, Fiona, will be with the dispensation for Ojai being free of charge for 5 years until 1 October 2025,
Yep.
which in effect is a dispensation.
Yep. So J to N with changes to M.
And those are the changes that you've indicated in JKL.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm happy to move those recommendations J through to O with those.
You don't need to do O because you didn't
I did right.
you picked
To N. J through to N with those amendments, which are quite explicit in M for the dispensation at Ojai for 5 years up until 1 October 2025. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that.
Sorry, Councillor Scott seconded.
Okay.
Councillor Scott seconded that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you for the discussion on that. Thank you for the time involved in that, and thank you for the public for their submissions on that. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is item 7.3.
Excuse me, Your Worship, could we possibly get Councillor Byers to go and sit by Councillor Scott? Microphone seems good over there.
That's a good idea. And Councillor Ford, maybe.
I'm just wondering if it's the type of microphone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfectly.
Yep, yeah, perfectly.
I think it's
Perfectly.
the type of mic we're using. One lot of mics are really clear, one lot aren't. So so if Bruce wants to talk, we'll just pass him this one because it's wireless, so it makes it easy.
No,
And if Don moves over there, it's
Okay.
movable over.
Righto. Okay, next item on the agenda is the amended Southern Region Agreement position of river mouths.
Morena, Your Worship,
Morena.
councillors. I am supported this morning by Catherine McLaughlin from Environment Southland, who is a policy planner at the Regional Council and has been intimately involved in the development of the positions and the agreement that we are here to present to you this morning, to seek endorsement for the Mayor to sign and to seal it on behalf of the Council. Essentially, the agreement as to position of river mouths is part of the Regional Coastal Plan review currently underway. The agreement effectively sets the extent of the coastal marine area, often affectionately referred to by planners as the CMA, and that sets the landward boundary at river locations. This is used to determine the boundary between where the coastal plan applies and the proposed water and land plan and district plan apply. The Resource Management Act sets out the process for setting the positioning, and that is spelled out in the report. Under the Resource Management Act, an agreement setting the positions must be set between the current plan being operative, the coastal plan, and the review and consultation on the subsequent coastal plan. The Regional Council has worked through all of the river mouths within its jurisdiction with the relevant stakeholders. They identified that there were a couple of issues that needed resolving with the historic 1996 agreement, which has been refined. They've workshopped that with a range of people, which are listed in the report. Most rivers have had minor adjustments, with only 10 river mouths out of 44 on the list being relocated. 6 are within the dock estate, and the other 4 are within Southland District. 2 of the rivers in Southland District have had the CMA reduced, and that's at Aparima and Big River, which is in dock. 7 rivers have had the CMA increased, and the ones within the district are the 2 on Stewart Island, Waikawa River, and Tokanui River. Yep. So we at a staff level have agreed to all the changes in principle, and the Regional Council has proceeded to draft the agreement, and that is attached to this report for endorsement. My report outlines the process that the Regional Council will be going through to essentially socialise the changes with potentially affected parties, and that will be happening over the next little while. The District Council was asked to advise the particular agencies like the NZTA and any external contractors or operators that we have that may be operating in those areas once the agreement has been signed. Are there any questions?
Yep.
Councillor Harper.
Yes, the Waihao mouth. I see you've got there the extrapolation westward of the centre of Fishing Camp Road. Where does that actually sit? Because that Fishing Camp Road is right on the eastern end of the floodplain that the Waihao mouth traditionally moves backwards and forwards to exit to the sea. So how do you actually work that one out?
Thank you. That's such a great question. I've got Catherine to answer that question. She's got pictures of every single site, so she'll be able to talk you through where it was and where it has been changed to, if it's changed.
No problem. So the Waihao River, that's one that hasn't changed from the previous agreement to this one. So that one is extrapolated in a straight line out from the centre line of the Fishing Camp Road. That's sort of the only fixed point within that area, and because it's such a dynamic environment, it's easiest just to keep that one in line with the road there. So that's one that has remained unchanged.
So how do you work out your 5Ks area from the mouth with upstream?
So
where the mouth's going out now would be probably something like of at least 3Ks westward of the Fishing Camp Road. So yeah, it's just sort of a bit of a hazy vision to me.
yeah, so in practical terms, I guess you would need to use aerial imagery, and that would be how the council, Environment South and Regional Council would be advising on that one. So if we were to receive consent applications, we would be using aerial imagery just to extrapolate outwards from that road line.
Might be something to work offline, Councillor Harper, because I know.
Yeah, it could be, yeah. Your worship. Yeah, it's just a wee bit different because, like, why use aerial imagery really when you can drive to where the mouth is now, more or less, and the Fishing Camp Road on the other side of the river. So yeah, just a point we need to look at, I guess.
I get that. Okay, so we're here to move this recommendation so I can sign a document to approve these 2 river mouths. The Waititi ones, and not the Waititi, the other one that's indicated there. There was a case in court recently, wasn't it, over the RMA?
Sorry, which river?
The one in the Waitut that referred to here. Sorry, I've just lost it. The 2 rivers that we're signing off here today are the position of these 2 river mouths. Yeah, the big river. It's not on it. That's all right. Forget what I'm going.
So those ones are dock estate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the list of rivers that the District Council is confirming and agreeing with the Regional Council in is attached to the agreement, and it's quite extensive, including.
Oh, you're kidding me.
It's a test.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it's
So
all the ones
so
in
we're
Schedule
agreeing
1.
to the entire list. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I better not move something I've got to sign. Is there a councillor? If there's no other questions.
Can I just clarify, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Worship. On Schedule 1, the description for the Matara River is downstream side of State Highway 92 Bridge Road. I don't believe that that road is now called State Highway 92. I think that it is the Forge Road Tokanui Highway. Not sure whether that makes any difference, but
Okay, yes, thank you for pointing that out. We'll look into that and make sure it's got the correct name.
Thank you, councillor. Are there any other comments or questions in before I ask for this recommendation?
Happy to move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Councillor Kramer's moving the recommendation.
I'm happy to second it.
It's seconded by councillor Keast. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you so much. Right, I think we'll go straight into the Freedom Camping in the Catlins, item 8.1, page 59 of your agenda. Thank you, Mr. Speedy.
Excuse me, Your Worship, we can't hear anything on the.
He's right against the microphone too. Try again there, Michael.
So I pressed, it's gone green now. There we are. Is that better?
Yep, that's got it. Cheers.
So I'll say it again. So the purpose of this report is to request the council to amend the Freedom Camping bylaw and to endorse staff to request web and app providers to remove Wes Beach from their apps and websites as a designated Freedom Camping site. The Wes Beach Freedom Camping site has been overcrowded. There's not enough toilets there, and to reduce pressure at that site, we're proposing to remove it from web and app media resources. And also the Waikawa Freedom Camping site has had wet weather problems, and Council's community facilities team has sought to fund the ceiling and fencing of the area next to the toilets at Waikawa, and it's proposed to shift the designated Freedom Camping site to this new area. So the Waihopai Toto Community Board at its meeting on the 30th of June considered these issues and resolved to make a recommendation to the Regulatory and Consents Committee to complete the recommended actions in this report. And subsequently, the Regulatory and Consents Committee at its meeting on the 6th of August agreed with those items and recommended in turn to the same to council. Legally speaking, it is lawful for the council to seek for the Wes Beach site to be removed from apps and so forth. And concerning Waikawa, it is quite okay for the council to make a minor amendment to the Freedom Camping bylaw, but the legal advice was to consult with the direct neighbours before council made that decision. And I since have done that, and the outcome of my consultation is summarised at the top of page 62. And you can conclude from that that the direct neighbours, generally speaking, are quite supportive of this proposal. And council, out of interest, might want to note that this is a very, very small sample size, and in it you get the full spectrum of use for freedom camping. So there was one person who was quite prohibitive. He didn't want freedom camping at all in the Waikawa. There was another person who wanted them back in the domain, and that includes non-self-contained as well. And there was one who thought the report was just right. So with only a very small sample, you've got the full spectrum of views, and that just goes to show how impossible it is to please everybody with freedom camping. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions in regards to this report?
Through you, Your Worship, I've noticed that the summary of the consultation, I believe, and again, that's an address issue, that the two properties that you're saying are on the Waikawa Curio Bay Road are actually on the Niagara Waikawa Road. I don't think it makes any material difference, but for clarification, they are not the right addresses in my opinion.
The addresses aren't right, but the people would have been the right ones to talk to. Is that what you're saying?
I'm sure that the numbers are okay. The numbers fit with the Niagara Waikawa Road, but they're not on the Waikawa Curio Bay Road.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions in regards to this matter?
I have a question.
Councillor Owen.
Thank you. It notes there under option 1 that one of the potential disadvantages is that causing issues around other sites, and particularly in relation to DOC managed sites. And there's no mention of any consultation with DOC in this. Has any conversation happened with DOC around this potential change?
I've had some informal discussions with my contacts at DOC, so they are aware of this issue, yes.
And you're right, Councillor Owen, if you move them from one, they go to another, which was certainly found in the Lumsden area, that's for sure. Any other comments or questions? Okay, you have the recommendations A through to F. Is there a councillor in a position to move that recommendation?
I'm happy to move that, Your Worship. I think Mr. Safidi has done good work with this, and it's a good step at this current time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Duffy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Menzies. All those in favour? Against?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Totally agree. Thank you for your work that's done in regards to that. Thank you. So we've still got 2 minutes. 8.2. Page 77 of your agenda is the Gap Road East Winton Sewer Pump Rising Main. Dave's here to talk about that.
Morning.
Morning.
Before handing over, I'd just like to introduce you all to Dave Inwood, who has recently joined us as our wastewater asset manager. Dave has come to us from the, the West Coast with a real wealth of knowledge and experience, and is going to be a great benefit to our team, and I've no doubt to council as a whole. So I just thought, given that he's relatively new, I'd like to take this opportunity just to introduce him to you all. And without any further ado, I'll hand over to Dave and just let him speak to this brief report. I know I have emailed a couple of councillors about it previously, so the local councillors will be aware of it.
Thank you, Ian. So with an opportunity has arisen with some issues with private property wastewater treatment in Gap Road East. So what has come up as an opportunity for council to invest in a potential minor upgrade that will allow potential future expansion and development for others to connect to the scheme. So the cost contribution from this would not be affected by rates. There's a contribution component available in the council's reserves at this point in time. And so looking at the issues and the options, we could look at doing nothing and leave the property owner to stand alone, carry out their work. We could look at the opportunity to let them do that work and it be retained as private work, or indeed to the benefit of council to upgrade it and have it vested in council, which would then lead to potential other communities such as Brown's community to be connected in the future. So this would be a 1 kilometre initial investment at minimal cost, and very timely as well with the Three Waters review and reform with the government. So our recommendation would be the council looks at considering adopting option 3 to approve the sewer connection with council funding and contribution to a maximum of $24,000 from the Winton Sewage Contribution Fund. And this would be beneficial financially and for the community and in support of the Three Waters reform and review. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions in regards to this item? Makes sense.
Your Worship,
Yes.
through you, it's not a question. With item D, there's a request for unbudgeted expenditure of up to $24,000, which is fine. What concerns me is that council receives on a regular basis requests for unbudgeted expenditure. What I would like to see as an option for we receive a running total of all the unbudgeted expenditures that we are asked to pass. So it would be useful in future that we have a very clear understanding of just what has been passed for unbudgeted expenditure in the previous months. And I think that would be a good audit system as well, that we can keep an eye on all the unbudgeted expenditures that comes to us for approval.
Noted, councillor. From each group you're talking about too, like this is from the wastewater team.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. We have it broken down and we have a running total for the full amount, and gives us a very good understanding of all the unbudgeted expenditures that have been requested, and we can keep an eye on it.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions in regards to this item?
Excuse me.
Councillor Rudden.
I've just come back and our power's gone down, so I'm not actually sure where we're at. So could someone just give me a quick overview where we're sitting on the agenda, please?
Certainly. Well, we're at item 8.2 on page 77. We've just had an update. Had an update from Dave Inwood in regards to the sewer pump rising main for the unbudgeted expenditure of $24,000, looking for an extension to the pipe work.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
And I'm just asking for a councillor to move the recommendations A through to D. Oh, look at that, 2 hands up. Councillor Fraser, seconded by Councillor Menzies. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Isla Bank War Memorial Restoration Project, page 81 of your agenda. I see it featuring in our latest magazine. Mr. Erskine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. So I'm just substituting in for Catherine Cowie today, who's unavailable, but her and I have both been working on this project in the meantime. So you may have seen in the magazine there was a feature about this particular monument, and at this stage we've progress work to a point that we thought it was going to be completed, but the main worker on site or contractors identified an issue with the stability of the top soldier and the top plinth not being anchored to the lower section, which has required a report to get some additional funding via the ward. And the report's gone to the Wallace Community Board, and they've approved that amount of money, and now it's just asking for ratification from the full council of $13,000.
Any comments, Councillor Menzies?
Thank you, Worship. I just note in the report it says that at this stage it's unknown if these are the money for burial costs of exclusive right of burial. How will you find that out, and when?
This used to be a cemetery run by a trust up till about 6 years ago, and when we took over they gave us an amount of money that they had in the bank and we put that in as a reserve. But soon after that, another piece of paper turned up with a list of names on it that had prepaid money for a grave site, but it wasn't clear if it was an exclusive right of burial or to actually pay the full fee for the burial. And subsequently, we have taken as meaning that's exclusive right of burial, which is a small fee, and they still have to pay the full burial cost. But one of the early people that had one of those plots came in with some proof that they had in fact paid a full burial fee, and so we had to allow for that money in that one in particular, but there's another 10 people with similar plots that we're not sure the status of what they can prove or not. So we've had to set some money aside just in case we have to fund. I think it's about $2,000 now for a funeral.
So do you intend just to wait for the burial request?
Well, we tend
Or
to have
are you
to.
going to, if you know the names, then you're going to clarify them?
Well, some of those go back 30 years, the original request, and depending where the family's at. Though we are looking at doing that with quite a few cemeteries. In some places, we've got 50 or 60 exclusive right of burials and that type of thing that we want to clarify because we're starting to run out of land in some places, and we are going to follow that up. Yes.
So when is the intention to follow up going to occur?
Probably in the next 12 months when time allows for staff to do what they can.
Yes, because this is clarity around a $10,000 amount. Because we don't
Oh,
have
yes,
the
that's right.
information, so the money's got to come from elsewhere, then if that may not even be an issue.
Well, it's created an issue early on, but just the scale is what we're trying to work with.
Councillor Ford.
Mike. Thank you. Did we apply to PGF fund for any assistance in these projects? Has been announced the other day around the other parts of the region, but have we missed out on that or did we not apply?
The PTF fund, we didn't apply to that. There was a $5,000 grant that we got because this project's been sitting around for even well before the PTF application was available. And we had a $5,000 grant from one of the council funds, but we didn't have any extra application for the PTF side of it.
So have we got enough money to do all this work that's been proposed in general around the region? Or the Anne Robbie work?
Well, depending on each ward's capacity to be able to pay. But I think the PTF was requiring quite a lot of detail for each structure that we didn't necessarily have at the time of application were required. And that's why we haven't.
Yeah, some of the war memorial funding was applied for. I know Anne Robbie's been keeping a pretty close eye on it and has missed out on some of it. And Invercargill's just been given quite a substantial amount to do 5 of their memorials. But for a couple of $1,000 type projects, they're just not in the mix.
So are we suggesting that other operators have done a better application that we might have?
Well, they've tended to work on a larger scale as well. Like tomorrow, the Falbert Gates in Queen's Park has got a huge project starting here with maple carpentries and held at those memorial gates. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's
okay. I'm looking for money, sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we'll certainly use it. And that's the CPL team is with Catherine is very good at finding every place that we can
certainly in tune for it.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments or questions?
Yes, Your Honour.
Your Honour.
Yep. Well, whatever. Your Worship. I'm premeditating. Whilst I have absolutely no objection to this project, I'm all in favour of it actually. I'm not 100% sure that I'm happy about the application or the way it's been applied for the funding. The ward fund, Wairau Aparima Ward Fund, I've always understood was to be distributed after consultation with the councillors, being Councillor Byers, Councillor Owen, and Councillor Harper in this situation. Are we right? And
you are, but you might be going off subject. Is it
not really, I don't think, Your Worship.
Go for it.
The Your Honour, wait, I'll get myself confused here. The way I read this is I have had no knowledge of this report until I read it the other day, and I'm not sure whether Councillor Owens or Councillor Byers have. And it also states here that the Atiatau Community Board have sort of authorised it as well, or recommended it to go ahead, and this was also without consultation with the Tuatapi Tuaewa Community Board, and I'm not sure on the Riverton Community Board. So Yep, as I said at the start, I've got no objection to it, but just the way it's been applied for. And as Councillor Kramer said before, a bit of record keeping behind where some of these projects come from and who authorised them might be a good option.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harper. It may be something we need to look at offline, but I think we're here to figure out whether we can actually get this going. This project's been well advertised. It's been well supported, and they just need this capital to finish it. Is that how I understand it, Mr. Erskine? They need this capital to just
That's correct, yes.
pay some contractors, and maybe, well, not maybe. I think we need to probably just get that answer to your question, Councillor Harper.
Yeah, like as I said for a start off, Your Worship, I have absolutely no objection to the project.
Yep, no, that's cool. All right, are there any other
If
comments?
I may, I support the project as well. Just a point from what was said before, I thought Venture Southland, and with part funding from Regional Heritage and the Community Trust, actually did it. There was an assessment of all the war memorials around Southland about 5 or 6 years ago. Have I got that wrong, or is there perhaps some information that we've actually got that we've overlooked?
No, you're right. There was an assessment done, and I know that a number of the memorials at that time were earmarked for some urgent work, and others were delayed as per a bit of work being done by Anne Robiest, who actually owned some of these memorials.
Yeah, it's just pretty to the point that saying that we didn't have good information to have applied for funding. I would have thought our information would have been quite, we would have had quite a bit on hand.
No, I think different organisations wanted to do it themselves, like the Councillor Fraser might be able to help me here, but the one at Lime Hills was done by the school, and they were very
What I'm trying to say is the information is there, I'm sure, on the state of our war memorials that could have been used in an application.
No, thank you. All right, you have the recommendations there in regards to approving this funding, this A through to D. Is there a councillor in a position to move that recommendation? Councillor Menzies is moving the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Byers? Councillor Byers is seconded. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think we'll have a break now. Fiona, are you just being aware of those on Zoom, quarter of an hour? If we can have a break until 10 to, that clock's wrong up there still, 10 to 11. If we can get back in here at 10 to 11, please, so everyone's not hanging around on Zoom.
All good. Thank you. Right. Jack.
It's snowing again here in Edendale.
We can hear yeah, trouble is.
Oh, that sounds better. Michael?
Yes.
Councillor Keith's video has been disabled by the host.
Sorry, say that again.
Councillor Keith's video and stuff's been
Oh, yes, yeah. I'll release it all now.
all right, okay. Right, we're all live again, folks.
Okay.
Your worship, are you ready to go?
It's telling me I can't start my video because the host is disabled.
All out having their cuppa.
Yes, it is. I'm back on it now. I think.
Quite right, Karen.
Oh.
I'll get you a virtual bell, Fiona.
Oh. I didn't think so either. So, no.
Michael, can you just pause the recording and stuff at the moment? Yeah, Tar. Someone in the chamber, can you please go and get everybody back in because it's past 10 too.
I'll go, Fiona. I'll go get some.
Friendly then.
You came down the road all right?
Yeah, that wasn't too bad.
Here they come, Fiona.
Yeah, no, so we'll probably stay here all day. Oh no, I got the broom out and I swept off most of it off the roof.
Yeah, please be.
I didn't come down. And I got 15 minutes early and gone out and taken all the snow off the windows. So
You right to go, Fiona?
Yeah, we've been right to go for the last 5 minutes.
You didn't ring the bell.
We are 1 minute over. Okay, so we have everybody here. Where's Don? Come on. Okay, we have the Chief Executive's management report, which we're going to take as read. But there are group managers available to answer any questions you may have on that. I would suspect at the moment that the Chief Executive is pretty concerned about getting on a ferry across from Picton to Wellington. Okay, so you have the management report there. Are there any questions from anybody in regards to it? There's no comments I'm going to make on here.
Me, please, Your Worship.
Okay, we'll start with Councillor Rodenclaw, then Councillor Menzies.
Report number 16, the Building Solutions team has continued to face challenges with the processing of the building consents, which has been put in front of us. I just wanted to know if we've had any, with the additional funding and the putting out there for new staff, have we received any applications going forward? Have they managed to bridge any of the gaps in that team?
So through you, Your Worship, at this point in
Can
time.
everybody hear, Fran?
Yep.
At this point in time, we haven't been able to fill any additional roles, but we have got a number of advertisements out for the team leader role. So we've completed a minor reorganisation just to implement the additional leadership structure under the manager, and those positions are out and advertised at the moment.
Thank you.
Councillor Menzies.
Thank you, Worship. With regard to clause 24, just with the dark skies plan change, that was released on 6th of August. So were there appeals, or is that now a plan change that can be made operative?
I've just got Margaret here with me at the moment. Margaret, just come forward. Sorry.
Through you, Worship. Thank you for that question. No, we received no appeals to that plan change. So the next step is to make that operative, and it's my intention to get that to the next full council meeting, which is a November date, I understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions in regards to the management council forward?
Yeah, item 19, I suppose we have a mic cleaner, please. The process to be reviewed for a dog registration, did that cause some any changes in income, or what are we going to change on that?
Through you, Your Worship. In terms of the dog registration review, there will be an opportunity at a later point when we're looking at the long-term plan to consider fees and charges. But at this stage, the review is really just to ascertain whether the system improvements have met the requirements for our customers. So at this point in time, it's really about us working through to see if the efficiencies have been gained and if that was appropriate. We have had a little bit of feedback so far that our customers did stumble on some pieces of the new online system, so we want to try and tidy that up.
Yep, I did get one comment from one dog owner that the multiple dogs were a complication that they had to turn on and off a couple of times to manage the registration. So if we could assist, that would be an improvement.
Yes, that's our feedback as well. Thank you.
So Your Worship, is Matt in the room?
Yes.
Matt, could you just provide a bit of an overview on item 49? It's forestry, and see that there's been a 360,000 re-evaluation against a budget devaluation of 1.5 million. Can you just give an explanation on that and what impact that may have, and also around the mountain cycle trail with regards to the repairs and recent additional damage, and how that's progressing?
Through you, Your Worship, in relation to item number 49, the comment I would make in relation to the revaluation is really that the fluctuations annually are anticipated and expected based on a number of factors. The volume of harvest plays a significant part. The market movement in terms of land values plays a part, as does the market price for logs and the age of the portfolio as a whole. So from my perspective, nothing to be concerned about there. The movement is in keeping with what we would anticipate to see based on those factors.
Okay. Yep.
In relation to the around the mountain cycle trail, Councillor Kramer, there was some additional damage found on the trail as a result of recent inclement weather. That particular section of the trail has been isolated, and we are in the process of liaising with NB around opportunities for sourcing funding contribution to assist with the remedial works, and also working with the roading company who were already working with us on remedial works from previous flood damage to figure out next steps. So in relation to that damage, what we need to ascertain is whether or not the direction and flow of the river has altered to the extent that that's the new direction of flow, or whether it's temporary only in nature, and that will determine how we look to reinstate the trail and the extent of works to be undertaken. So we're still in those in the investigatory phase at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. You've also covered part of my concern with the cycle trail, is that if we're going to continue to have the sort of damage to the trail that's quite of major concern, and whether the parts of the trail is actually in the right location. So I would presume as part of your analysis that's been looked at, and whether or not there's the need to look at that cycle trail if it's going to continue to keep getting damaged like that, because it's quite significant. Thank you.
Any other questions around the management report? Okay, I'm in a position to move the check.
Excuse me, sorry, couldn't get myself off mute there. Can I go? It's very hard to hear you now. Question for around the knowledge management and business solutions on page 94 and 95 was the NRA, and they're talking about pathway records management integration. What does NRA stand for? And also under 90, under business solutions, that's note 90. What is a FAT client environment?
FAT client environment is your big computers.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Through you, Your Worship, in the absence of Trudy Hurst, I'll attempt to provide some context. NAR is an acronym I'm not too familiar with.
Sorry, excuse me, Matt, I'm pretty sure it's the National Records Act.
Okay, so I'm told it's the National Records Act. It is the NAR integration, and the FAT client is referring to a standard size computer or desktop. We currently utilize thin clients, which are a reduced size desktop model, and the recommendation from the business solutions team is that we return to a FAT client environment for the reasons identified.
Thank you. Makes a bit more sense.
Sorry, can I just clarify that too? I thought you said NRA, it's NAR, it's the address records is the what NAR stands for.
National Address Record.
Oh no, our system has all the records of addresses. Yeah.
I think there used to be fines for acronyms, didn't there? Okay, any other questions around the management report? All right, I'm happy to move the management report on page 85. It's received by Councillor Menzies. All those in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 8.5, page 97, the Ojai Nightcaps District Stock House. Louise,
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. I'm presenting this report on behalf of Cynthia Care, and it is coming from a recommendation from the Wallace Tech Community Board at the meeting on the 9th of September. Sorry, 3rd of September. Agreed to recommend to council that the Ojai Nightcaps District Doctors Health and Surgery Committee, that might help, fund be wound up and distributed to the two communities. There has been some, I'm not going to go into the background or the report, I'll take that as read, but there has been some discussion in the communities about the division of the money between within the communities themselves, but I'm happy to report that that has been sorted as per the recommendations for the 60-40 splits, and the board fully supports this wind up and so do the agencies that are getting the funding and are very appreciative of being able to spend it on projects they have already underway. One of the key, the obvious reason for why we are recommending this wind up is that we've had no applications to this fund since 2016. It has been advertised, but it has got quite restrictive criteria on it. So we felt that it was better for the communities and the agencies in particular to be able to use it and make it worthwhile. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, and certainly picked up your point that this was a community that got together and discussed this and came up with this recommendation. Are there any comments or questions around this report? Okay, you have the recommendations in front of you. I'm going to move those recommendations.
Happy to second it, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Kramer. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. All right, so we'll move directly in. Thank you for that. We'll move directly into the governance reports, and we have the Fonterra Contribution Fund, which Louise is going to.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, thank you for being here. This is specifically about interest from the Fonterra Contribution Fund, not that fund itself. As you probably remember, both the fund and the interest issues were discussed at the community and strategy meeting in February, and two separate reports. And it was recommended at that time a set of criteria was in the report, and it was recommended to take that back to the Waihopai Toi Toi Board for discussion. And to see what their opinion on that was. Also was recommended to take it to Fonterra. Both things have happened since then. Both discussions have happened since then. And the board was really pleased to see the clarity coming out of what was the two grants and at the two systems, and that there was going to be a fund that could be used within the community itself. And so that was really, they were really happy about that. They were probably wanting, not so happy about some of the criteria. And so they had made recommendations back to the council with some changes to the criteria, which are included in this report and in the recommendations. Probably the key recommendation change they are making is around the 50% contribution from rates and 50% from the fund. And the main reasoning for this is that they feel that they are, for the community, they would be giving with one hand and then taking back with the other hand. And it's still ratepayers' money, and they will be able to do more in the community, for the community, with this funding. And they're all, as they said really clearly, we're all responsible to the ratepayers. So the projects will be thought out wisely and have to come back to the council for approval. So they were really keen to see that criteria not to be included in the list. They also were keen to say that this fund, the interest fund, should be just for projects that the community board is doing, not for community groups, because the community groups have the partnership fund and other funds like the John Bench Fund to be able to apply to do community projects. So they thought that this was a really good chance to be able to do some projects that they've got and have been waiting to do in conjunction with the LTP process and with staff to ensure that the timing is right for all processes. So they are recommending the criteria as is listed in recommendation E.
Thank you. Once again, it's gone through a pretty process. Okay, any comments or questions in regards to this matter? I know Councillor Duffy and Councillor Keys have been pretty well in the loop of this. Are any questions around that? No. All right, you have the recommendation. You have the recommendation. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry.
I just wanted a clarification about why the board felt that to spend any of the monies from that fund that would need to be matched by funds from the ratepayer.
Because the original, through you, Your Worship, the original criteria from the Community and Strategy Committee included a criteria that, as listed over the page, that any project would be funded on a 50-50 principle, 50% from rates and 50% from the fund. That was the criteria from council recommending to the board. The board is recommending that criteria, that particular criteria not to be included, and that it would be 100% funded from the fund for the projects that they apply. They're very aware that there's a limit, that there's that amount of money, and once that amount of money is gone, then that's it. But they see it as not having to seek rates again to pay.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'll put the recommendations A to E. Councillor in position to move, Councillor Scott, second Councillor Menzies. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you for working that, everybody. Next item on the agenda is the long-term plan workshop, page 116 of your agenda summary. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you and good morning, Your Worship and councillors. The purpose of this report is to confirm the long-term plan August workshop outcomes as part of the long-term plan 2031 process. As part of that process, council recently participated in a 2-day workshop on the 24th and 25th of August. The purpose of the workshop was to provide an overview of activity management plans, infrastructure and financial strategies, and seeking confirmation of direction for the revenue and financing policy ahead of another round of community board workshops. Further, a summary session was held on the 27th of August to finalise the guidance from council for staff ahead of the next workshop on the 30th of September, which is tomorrow. The workshop provided the opportunity to generate conversations around council activities and seek guidance on where staff needed to prioritise for the next workshop in September. The key outcomes from the workshop are contained in the report, which I'll take as read in the recommendations for council. The main one being, though, that the council asked staff to provide more detailed options and scenarios to council to further enable prioritisation of the next long-term plan workshop, which is being focused. Below there are listed some of those options discussed, but further options have been in the process for council to consider going forward. Happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you. Any questions in regards to this matter? Is there anyone waiting online? Councillor Byers.
Thank you. We talked about the rates being at basically maximum affordable level. Was there any confirmation or discussion around how we move through this long-term plan process without building on these rates increases, but perhaps trying to stay within this maximum level of rates that we have?
Yeah, through your worship, I think that is the purpose of bringing these options back. So I think the options were potentially limited last workshop. So the executive leadership team in particular has been trying to address that to enable council to have a better suite of options to consider about how to move forward for this long-term plan process, which we'll be discussing in more detail tomorrow.
And I think that's covered in bullet point 1 as well, providing more detail. Excellent. Any further questions? Councillor Douglas, are you waving? No. No. All right, so you have the recommendations. I'm happy to move recommendations A through to D. Councillor Fraser, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So before we move into public excluded, I'd like to bring item 10.3, the appointment of the interim chief executive, into the public part of the meeting. There's no need for it to be my report on page 257 of your agenda. It doesn't need to be in the public excluded. So I don't know if Blair's got a copy of that. If we can probably get it. So my apologies, this has just happened over a discussion this morning. So has everybody got access to that now? Okay. I think we'll just discuss it and open. It's a reasonably short report. It's appointment of an interim chief executive starting next Monday, the 5th, through to around about the 9th of November. And the chief executive that will be acting or interim is Mr. Ross McNeil from the North Island, and he will be he has been appointed. I'm asking that we appoint him as our interim chief executive for that period. A contract has been looked at with Mr. McNeil, and he's in a position to come down and start as of next Monday. Are there any comments or questions around that? If not, I'm happy to move that we appoint Mr. Ross McNeil to the position of acting chief executive.
I'm happy to second that recommendation.
I see the 5th, it's actually the 3rd of October, my apologies. Okay, so that's seconded, moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. All right, so we only have one item left on the agenda, and that is in public excluded. And I'll move that we move into public excluded.
Excuse me, Your Worship, you already moved that before, so we're just going back into PE again.
Okay, so just start again.
Yeah, so Michael, can you please colour YouTube?